Welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett along with Kent Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And, today's subject is not all that fun to talk about, but it's very, very important and something Oklahoma really needs to work on.
Yes, it's important information. As you say, it's not always pleasant to hear, but it's important to know. We are very pleased today to have Jeff Dismukes from the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services join us to talk about what we've simply labeled addiction.
What are the new trends, and where is Jeff putting his resources? Kent and I'll be back with Jeff right after this.
I wanted to become a princess ever since I was little. Being crowned is an amazing feeling. It means everything to me to represent my tribe, especially as princess.
The Chickasaw Princess program has been in existence since 1963. The leadership and the skills that we learn as being the Chickasaw Princess has been handed down from generation to generation.
We're the ambassadors of the Chickasaw Nation for a year.
We're a special group of ladies that have represented different governors and lieutenant governors over the years.
I would tell young girls who want to become a princess just to go for it. Don't let any barriers stop you from doing what you want to do.
There are some dynamic young ladies that are going to be great ambassadors for the Chickasaw Nation out there. Once a princess, always a princess, with honor and dignity.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofenation.com.
The Vet Hero office at the University of Central Oklahoma, it is a one-stop shop for veterans when they're trying to get their education.
I call it my encore job. I get to take care of veterans. We help them transition. I was that guy that transitioned after 24 years, and in the end, GI Bill is a benefit that those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine earned. It was the thing that made us the greatest country in the world coming out of World War II, and it will continue to do the same thing for this future generation of service members.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we've got Jeff Dismukes from the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services joining us. Jeff is the Director of Communications there. He joined the department in 1994, been there about 26 years. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Oklahoma, got his master's degree at the University of Oklahoma. He's won numerous awards for his work in the addiction and addiction-related matters as well as mental health, which of course is related. And he's involved with professional organizations that try to promote the general welfare of the citizens here. This is his first visit to The Verdict. Jeff, I know you've been on our set before, but first time on camera.
First time on camera.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just tell us about the resources, the staff, and who you have working on this.
Okay. Well, there are about 1,800 employees statewide for the department, but the majority of our services are actually delivered through local community contractors, nonprofit contractors, and medical individuals who are really making a difference throughout the state. Our head of the agency is Interim Commissioner Carrie Slatton Hodges. Carrie has an incredible background as far as clinical services, and particularly in rural areas. She has been very involved in some of the most innovative programs that we have. She is an individual who worked on changing the provider reimbursement system to a system that looks at outcomes, where providers are reimbursed based on outcomes as opposed to just a fee-for-service type model. That's made a huge difference, not just in getting Oklahomans well, but it's also kept our costs stable and it allowed us
Keeps them
to
well.
serve more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an incredible thing. She has been involved in trying to find innovative programs for the most seriously ill, people that you might see in the system more frequently. She's really has taken the lead on advancing telemedicine, telehealth. She is an individual who really championed putting iPads with our providers to, one, serve people who were in treatment, allowing them to have an iPad so that they could have access to a medical professional basically 24/7 and be able to help progress the recovery. But also we've outfitted law enforcement in parts of the state and have been very successful in using that to actually do screens in the field and get people to the appropriate services when they engage with law enforcement. Just some incredible things going on. In the end, it's all about serving Oklahomans better and trying to do as much as we can, more without having to have that much more of an investment.
That seems very effective, considering, I guess, the front line of impact with mental health would be law enforcement.
Often, and too often, but
Yeah.
and I think that's something we talk about, especially when we talk about addiction, is that difficulty in people actually knowing where to turn.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not that tough to get into the system and to find services, but there are a lot of roadblocks that we have because we often don't understand what services are. We aren't sure exactly where to go because it's been fragmented in the past. Really, what I always tell everybody, especially with addiction issues, is that it all starts with an assessment. It all starts with you, and within our system, the front door is a community mental health center or a comprehensive community addiction and recovery center. You don't need an appointment. You can walk in. You're going to get screened. You're going to get linked to the right services. And then there's a variety of services that we have available through the department to help support those individuals in need. We want to get you to the service that you're going to be most successful with, that you need for treating your disease. And these are diseases. These are illnesses. These are diseases of the brain. Sometimes they're co-occurring when I talk about mental health and substance use. But certainly substance use is something that is getting that much more attention right now. We've talked about it a lot with opiates and everything else that's happening in our state. It's a long-standing problem in Oklahoma. And something that we've been addressing, we want to continue. I think we've been very successful with many of the initiatives that are out there, but we want to continue to be successful and advance that much more.
What does your rural network look like? Does every county seat have a presence?
So we have a statewide network to provide services. Now, you don't have a provider in every community, obviously, especially when you get into rural areas. As somebody who grew up in rural areas, I know the difficulty of accessing services. When you have small towns, it's difficult to have those professionals who are there. But we do have a reach into those communities. We have satellite offices, whether that be, there's only a couple of actually state-operated services still in the state where the state is operating the center. Most of that, like I said, are community providers. They'll have multiple satellites. For instance, we have a community mental health center in Woodward, but we have satellites throughout the area. We have a community all the way over to Enid, basically from Woodward to 35. We have services up in the Panhandle. We have services down in Lawton, Oklahoma. And we'll have satellites out in that area. Now, people still in rural areas have to travel, and that's why things like telehealth are so important, so that we can help get those services out there. Northeastern Oklahoma, the same way. Grand Lake Community Mental Health Center is delivering services up in that northeastern part of the state, doing fantastic work, especially through iPads, and they're one of the groups that has really pioneered this use of telemedicine and iPads to deliver those services, and we're able to reach that many more people. It's incredible.
Are there areas of the state that are more in need of your services than other areas?
Well, you can see geographically where there are issues. Eastern Oklahoma has traditionally been an area where you have higher rates of substance use, for example, and we see, especially on that eastern side, that southeastern side of the state, maybe more problems with addiction issues, with overdose issues. Western Oklahoma certainly has a pocket where we see some higher rates. And then in the communities where you have large populations, obviously we have many people in those communities who will be in need.
When you talk about addiction, are there things that people are addicted to that you don't serve, or are there specific addictions that you concentrate on?
Well, we it's across the board. We do everything from gambling addiction services.
Okay. So it's not
to,
only about physical health or
correct,
mental health.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
we provide services for gambling addiction. Actually, we're quite proud of what's happened there over the years. We started and actually created that treatment program from the ground up. We didn't have certified gambling addiction treatment specialists in the state of Oklahoma, so we developed the training. We put all that in place and built the certification process so that we could do that. And initially, you had about 6, 7 agencies that were delivering services. Well, that's now expanded. We have over probably 47, I believe, locations right now across the state of Oklahoma where people can go in the doors and get gambling addiction services. We were able to take that and train a cadre of professionals. We have them in community mental health centers now, in these comprehensive community addiction recovery centers where people can go in and get those services. We do, obviously, we've talked a lot about our opiate treatment. We do a lot in that area and actually have received some additional funding through federal grants to help expand that treatment. We treat over 1,700 Oklahomans right now with medication-assisted treatment, and that's something that this federal money made available. The other thing that's kind of amazing about that is it wasn't that many years ago, the thought of using medications to treat addiction, that was just unheard of. And actually there was a huge backlash within the addiction treatment community about the thought of doing any of this. We've advanced. We see that this works. Our outcomes for these individuals on that level of treatment are very good, much better than what you might see with other diseases. When we think of cancer and heart disease and treatment outcomes there, and how often that's successful. Over 80% of the people we have who are receiving medication-assisted treatment are successful. And when we do surveys, of course, we're still early in this process, but we survey people once they're 6 months out and then further and track their progress. They're staying very successful in those treatment outcomes. There's treatment for everything else across the board.
Well, let me ask you about the tribes in Oklahoma. Are they contributing to your success?
Actually, as far as in which area?
Gambling.
In gambling, I believe that there are partnerships now with the tribes where they are doing some additional things to help point people in the right direction.
We may have to take that up after the break.
We'll have to talk about that a little bit.
Kent and I and Jeff Dismukes will be right back after this break.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. That's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers and our guest, Jeff Dismukes.
Jeff, Talk a little bit about what your agency does in relation to alcohol addiction in Oklahoma.
Well, alcohol use and addiction, misuse and addiction, and
Yeah.
overuse and addiction is really a long-standing problem in the state. You know, initially I became involved back in the late 1980s with prevention around underage drinking, and so this is an issue that I've seen for years, and we've seen a lot of negative outcomes. We provide treatment for this, and probably as we go along, I'll explain a little bit about treatment system, and I have something to add to that that's really quite encouraging. But what I really look at, we see alcohol addiction in the state. We certainly see outcomes such as traffic crashes and deaths associated with drunk drivers, and that's something that I think people think about most often. But what people don't always think about, there are basically three things that we see, not just in Oklahoma, but particularly in other rural states, that have driven down the life expectancy of citizens. Now, I saw something encouraging on that just this week that I'll talk about in a minute, but the people in Oklahoma primarily are dying from overdose deaths. Alcohol is part of that. Alcohol poisonings is part of that, but that's been primarily opiates. Certainly suicide, and you see alcohol use and drug use often involved, unfortunately, with suicides. But I think what really maybe surprises people is that the number of cases, number of deaths for chronic liver disease has increased significantly in Oklahoma after the last several years. Of course, alcohol is a big part of that. About 686 Oklahomans died in 2015 from chronic liver disease, and that's up about 44% since 2010. When we really start thinking about that, I think that kind of hammers home the problem. Those are deaths that maybe many of which we could prevent by providing better education up front, and we can prevent a lot of these deaths from occurring. We can prevent alcohol addiction by talking early with our children especially and really addressing the issue. But also we can get people into treatment and be very successful in treatment. Now, what has happened in the past, you have limited beds within the treatment system, and we have a lot of people who are in need of treatment for substance use. So the beds aren't just alcohol and other drugs. It's about who's in most need. And so what we would do is we would see people come into the treatment system. Because you have limited beds, you kind of have to prioritize who's going to get the first bed. So our prioritization has always been IV drug users, women who are pregnant, women with children, and it kind of ramps down. Alcohol's towards the end of that. So you might see people waiting for a residential treatment bed who are in need of services. They've come to us and they've said, we really want to get help. We want to change our lives. They're ready for treatment. Anybody that works with these things knows that's a very important time. But you might be waiting 30 to, in some cases, up to 200 days before a bed might open. Treatment's not just a few days. It's not 30 days. Well, it depends. It really depends on the individual and what that disease is and what they need. You could see somebody, so we always talk about, 30 days, 28 days, 30 days. I think that was always talked about on television where people, I've seen it, short stays. I've certainly seen that, but I've seen people having to be in treatment for up to 6 months depending on what their treatment issue is. It sometimes takes us a long time to get that sick. You can't expect to be well overnight. It might take a little bit more time.
How important is it that the person wants to be in treatment? Because, the people that care about them might want them to be in treatment. Right. And I could see that process beginning based out of their concern. But doesn't the person have to believe there's a problem and want to get help?
I think I've heard different things with it. My deal is it's like, let's get them into treatment and let's start getting them well so they know that they want help. But I do think that wanting treatment, being engaged in treatment has a lot to do with whether or not you're going to be successful. You have to understand that I don't want to live like this anymore. And it's not that I have to do it, it's that I want to do this. I want to be well. I want to be productive.
Are you sensing that Oklahoma employers are more sensitive to the needs of their employees? And
Definitely.
And people might be less afraid to check into a treatment center, afraid that they might not lose their job, if there'll be a job waiting for them when they get out?
I think that's definitely a discussion. That's one of the barriers to treatment is fear of it. I've talked to employers who are really addressing this issue and realize the need here because it impacts our workforce. And this is a big piece of not just disability, but lack of productive days at work. It's a big part of accidents that occur on the job, injuries that occur on the job. It's a cost to employers, and I think that's why it's so important we get in front of this. The encouraging thing I was going to tell you about is last year, legislature and the governor approved an additional $10 million for treatment beds. It's first investment that we've had in residential substance abuse treatment beds since I can remember. And that is going to add 175 new beds to the system, which is going to cut this waiting list that we've had. Not completely out, but probably up to about 80% of that is going to change, and that's going to make a huge difference for people that need to get in treatment. Now, it's not just residential beds. Like I said earlier, it's about getting people to the right services, and there's some different things out there, but that combined with medication-assisted treatment, combined with some really great outpatient services and really the use of technology to help people be successful there, we can turn this in Oklahoma, so I'm really excited about it.
Just in the very short time we have, opioid addiction in Oklahoma and areas of the state.
Right. Well, opiates have obviously been in the news quite a bit. The encouraging thing there is we've changed that negative path. Oklahoma is one of only 2 states in the nation that have really significantly dropped that overdose death rate, which is really what you're looking at with opioids, those high overdoses, number of overdose deaths. We've made incredible inroads there. We've been able to partner with the medical community. We're doing great things at the community level. And that's changing. People are living now, whereas opposed to where they were dying previously. We're moving in the right direction. As a matter of fact, the good news I heard when I was talking about what we call the diseases of despair, the chronic liver disease, suicide rates, and overdose deaths, that's changing. Our overdose deaths have decreased, and I saw a national report just this week talking about that, where life expectancy is starting to come back up because those overdose deaths have been stemmed. Now, I do have to caution everybody, we do have something in the state where overdose deaths are skyrocketing, and that's methamphetamine. We have not lost the negative impact of methamphetamine use in Oklahoma. That's starting to rise again. We're starting to see overdose deaths associated with methamphetamine, and this is an issue, again, that will take a comprehensive effort, similar to what we've done with opiates.
That's a highly addictive drug, is it not?
Extremely addictive drug, and there's some special treatment options that come along with that, or an understanding of treatment needs that come with that. There's some great things happening already there. We're partnering with the city of Tulsa. There is a great project going on there right now to start looking at these issues and get in front of these issues. There are other things happening throughout the state. We're working with a number of different groups.
Where does homelessness fall into this big conversation?
It's a big part of it. It's now it's a smaller number of people when you look at it compared, but it's certainly an area that we have to address and we have to look at and make sure.
A person in that situation has transportation needs, and when
Several
you're trying to
things.
follow up, I mean, it can be more difficult if a person doesn't have a residence.
Absolutely, especially, and not just substance use, with mental illness also. Now, it's not the overwhelming majority of people that we're looking at who are homeless necessarily, but substance abuse definitely triggers in there, and you're going to see quite a bit of that. But it is a population that we need to look at and see if we can provide something there. It's certainly a cost to our communities.
Jeff Dismukes, letting us get an update on addiction across the state of Oklahoma. Thanks so much for the work you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Pass
really
along our
appreciate
appreciation to your staff. I know it probably seems like a thankless job a lot of days, because I know there's a lot of struggle, and the amount of work that they have to go through doesn't seem to be decreasing anytime soon. So
Right.
Thanks for your work.
Yeah.
Kenton, I'll have a final word when we get back.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I really think people are so unaware of the number of kids waiting just in Oklahoma. And I think if more people knew that those children were out there waiting, I think that just by the way we live our lives and the people we talk to, that maybe we can help encourage adoption from Oklahoma.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Meyers wrapping up a show on addiction with Jess Dismukes.
Yeah, addiction in Oklahoma is a genuine problem. In some areas of the state, it's much more of a problem than other areas, but it's good to see that the department charged with the government's response to it is so effectively led.
And, the legislature and governor don't always get the credit they deserve, but last year, putting in an extra $10 million for some additional beds in this area, lives and families are going to be improved because of that investment.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. We have some website information. You can get more information on this subject. And this is a pretty lengthy website. I hope you got a pen handy. ok.gov/odmhsas.org. And of course, that stands for the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services.org. And we have a website. It's called theverdict.tv. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.